Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to continue talking about the map interface, but specifically focusing on how we can iterate on maps. So a quick overview here is I want to do an introduction on this particular slide deck. And then I want to iterate a map using the iterator over the Map.Entry interface. And then we'll take a look at a couple of examples where we'll do an iterator on a map and then remove an entry with the iterator on the map. And then we'll iterate over keys or values using either the keySet or the value methods. And then I'd like to iterate a map using the Map.Entry method and iterate a map using the forEach method. So we learned in the previous lecture that a map in Java is a container object that stores elements in the form of a key value pair. If the key is provided, its associated value can be retrieved easily, and keys must be unique. In this lecture, we'll explore how to iterate our maps in Java. There are multiple convenient ways to iterate over a map. We can iterate over keys, values, or both, and we can also remove an element from a map while we're iterating over it. Okay, so an iterator is an interface that contains methods to retrieve the entries of a map one by one. It provides three methods, right? Has next, which is a Boolean. It returns true if the iterator has more elements, false if it doesn't. Next, which returns back the element, the next element in the iterator. And then also a remove method, which removes the last element returned by the iterator. Note that we cannot iterate over a map directly using iterator because the map interface is not part of the collection interface. So to iterate map using the iterator, you have to be familiar with the Map.Entry interface. The entire point of Map.Entry interface is to make map part of the collection framework. So since all maps in Java implement the map interface, this technique can be used for any map implementation such as hash map, tree map, linked hash map, hash table, or whatever else. Let's take a look at example one, an iterator on a map. Let's take an example program where we iterate the map in Java using the iterator concept. So here, this is the source code, but I will open it up inside of our IDE. So we will do iterate map tester. Let me close out of these. And let me open up iterate map tester. Okay, so for iterate map tester, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to import my concrete class hash map. I'm going to import my interface iterator. I'm going to import my interface map, and I'm going to import my interface Map.Entry. So I'm going to create a new class so I can have a main method. So I can go ahead and create something that executes. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a map where the key is a string and the value is a string. And I'm just going to create an empty hash map. Then I'm going to put key value pairs in there. So V for violet, I for indigo, B for blue, G for green, Y for yellow, O for orange, R for red. Then from the Map.Entry set, so we can't do this on map directly because the map interface does not extend collections, but what does extend collections is the entry set of our maps. And so that will then support this iterator method. And so then we will get back an iterator object that will be of data type entry. Now remember, Map.Entry is a key value pair. So the generic data type that we're getting back here is of entries, of Map.Entries. And then each entry has to define what is its key and what is its value. So it's going to be a string as the key and a string as its value. So we're using this nested generic call for our iterator because each iterator will return back an entry where each entry is a key value pair. And then I will label that as iter for iterator. Then I'll use the iterator just like we've always seen the iterator get used. While iter has a next element, I will grab that next element and I will save that into this key, and then I will print out my key. And then what I'll do here is, so this was for my entry set. I can also invoke Iterator on the key set, because what gets returned from the key set is of data type set. So here I will get back an iterator on the inside the angled brackets here. The generic type will be whatever data type your key is. So my key is a string. So this is an iterator that will return back string elements. And then I will use the iterator so long as I have another a string inside of my collection of keys. I will grab that key, that next value, and I will print it out. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the map's values. That's going to get returned as a collection. And so collections have an iterator method. So I can call that on what gets returned from map.values. I will save that into a variable, an iterator variable. And here, the generic type that gets returned for this is whatever data type the values is. So my values is also a string. So I will have an iterator that returns back strings here. And see here, I'll do this loop so long as my iterator has a next element. I will grab that next element, save it into a variable, and print it out. So let's run through all three of those examples here. So here I can see that for here, I'm getting my key value pair, right? O for orange, I for indigo, Y for yellow, G for green, V for violet, B for blue, R for red. And then iterating on the keys of map here, I'm just going to get O, I, Y, G, V, B, R. And then iterating on just the values, this third iterator we set up, I'll be able to get just the values back: orange, indigo, yellow, green, violet, blue, and red. So that shows how we can set up an iterator for a key value pair, or just the collection of keys, or just the collection of values. So there's a lot of flexibility in how we can go ahead and walk across this collection type. So the next thing I kind of want to examine is to remove an entry with the iterator on our map. So let's create another program where we remove the last entry of the map returned by the iterator. So instead of looking at a slide with source code, let's jump actually to our IDE so we can actually run our application. So I'm going to import the concrete class hash map. I'm going to import the interface iterator. I'm going to import the interface map. I'm going to import the interface Map.Entry. I'm going to create a new class, Iterate Map Tester 2, so I can have the main method so I can actually execute this. I'm going to create a new variable of data type map that will have the key will be a string data type. The value will be a string data type. I'll make a new empty hash map. Here, I will put key value pairs into my hash map. Then what I'm going to do is from my map, I'm going to invoke the method entry set, which will have an iterator method. So I can give back a iterator for each entry. So I'm going to create an iterator variable so I can store that. And again, the generic data type for this is going to be of an entry type. And so each entry itself has to have a generic where it defines what is the key value pair. So our key is string and our value is string. So nested generics. So then I'm going to do this. While my iterator has a next element, I will grab that next element and I will print it out. Then I will remove the last entry of the map while iterating, and then I'll print out my new entry set. So let's go ahead and run that. And we can see here, we're iterating over the entries of our map: O for orange, I for indigo, Y for yellow, G for green, V for violet, B for blue, R for red. And then the entries of the map after doing that removal using our iterator, notice it removed the very last one. So our R for red. So this is good if you're like iterating over a collection, over a map, and then you make a decision, you have to delete that element for some reason. You can use that remove method safely and continue to iterate if necessary. Okay, so iterate over keys or values using keySet and value. So this technique is useful when you want to get a set view of keys or values of a map using keySet, values, and for each loop, you can iterate over keys and values of a map. So let's take an example program where we will iterate over keys or values of a map using the keySet and values methods. The keySet method returns a set view of the keys from a map, and the values returns a collection view of the values from a map. So let's go here to our iterate map tester. And so here I'm going to import my concrete class hash map. I'm going to import my interface map. I'm going to declare a class iterate map tester 3. I'm going to create a main method so we can actually execute this. I'm going to create a new map variable where the keys are integers and the values are string. And I'm going to create a new empty hash map. I'm going to put key value pairs in there. And then I'm going to use an enhanced for loop just to illustrate how powerful these enhanced for loops can be. So I'm going to create a local variable of the key type, so the integer, roll number, and then I'm going to iterate across the map's key set. So I'm going to get the collection of keys, and I'm going to bind each one to this local variable within the body of this for loop. And then I'm going to print that out. And then I'll just create a new line after that. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the values. I'm going to create a enhanced for loop where the local variable is going to hold an individual value from our map. So that's going to be data type string. And I'm going to iterate across the collection of values, map.values, and I'm just going to print out those values. And so if I go ahead and run this code, you can see this lets me go ahead and use an enhanced for loop to access the keys and to access the values. I also want to show you an example of how we can iterate a map using the Map.Entry method. So Map.Entry is an interface that is used to work on an entry in the map. It returns a collection view of the map. Each Map.Entry object contains one key value pair. So let's create a program where we iterate entry of a map using the Map.Entry, the K, V method. So we'll use the following methods for iteration: get value, which is used to retrieve the key of the map entry, get value, which will return back the value from the map entry, and entry set, which will return the set view of the entries of a map. So let's jump over here so we can actually look in our IDE. So I'm going to import our concrete class hash map. I'm going to import our interface map. I'm going to create a new class, iterate map tester 4. I'm going to create a main method so we can actually execute this. I'm going to create a new map variable where the keys are integers and our values are string. And I'm going to create a new empty hash map. I'm going to put key value pairs into my hash map. And now I'm going to use the enhanced for loop where I'm going to get a local variable of data type Map.Entry. So again, entry is the data type. It's a class, but it's an inner class to map. So in order to be able to access this class, we have to give it essentially a fully qualified path. So this is the inner class, the outer class. So Map.Entry. And so an entry has to use the generic type of what the key value pair is. So the key type is integer and the value type is string. And then the actual label we'll give this local variable is entry. And then we're going to, again, using the enhanced for loop notation. So we're going to use a colon, and then we're going to be stepping across the entry set here. So for each of these entries, we're going to invoke get key to get the key, which is going to be an int. We're going to invoke get value, which is going to be a string, add those into a local variable. And then what we'll do is just do a system.out.print on the key and the value local variables inside this for loop. Let's run that. And we can see our key value, key value, key value, key value, key value. And then I also want to show you how we can iterate the map using that lambda expression using the forEach method. So the forEach method was added to the iterable interface with the release of Java 8. So that's really recently. Is a default method that's defined in the java.lang.iterable interface. This method performs the specified action for each element within the iterable interface until all the elements have been processed. The collection classes which extend the iterable interface can use forEach method to iterate elements of collection objects. So the forEach method takes an action. So an action is a method. So you can either pass it a reference to a method, or you can give it an anonymous method in the form of a lambda expression to be performed as its parameter. If the specified action is null, then you will get a null pointer exception, and it won't do anything. So let's take an example program of using that forEach method using a lambda expression within the forEach method. And a lambda expression is essentially an anonymous method. Okay, let's jump over here. So here we're going to import our concrete class hash map. Here we're going to import our interface map. Here we're going to go ahead and define a new class. Here we're going to create a main method. We're going to create a new variable of data type map where the key is string and the value is string. And we're going to create a new empty hash map. We're going to put values into our hash map, set of key value pairs. And then what we're going to do is on the map itself, we can go ahead and invoke the forEach method that allows us to go ahead and pass one of these lambda expressions or a method reference into as the parameter. So we'll use a lambda expression. So a lambda expression is essentially an anonymous object where the notation is inside of here on the right. So on the left-hand side is our parameters. So our parameters is k/v, which is our key value pair. So what's cool about these lambda expressions is we don't have to declare a data type because Java fills that in for us. So it knows that this is going to be a key value pair where the local variable will be k and v. And then the body of our method, so then the arrow here, the dash and then greater than sign is more or less an arrow symbol. So this is the set of inputs into this body. And so this body is a system.out.println that will then print whatever the parameter that got passed in as k and v is. And so this is a way of defining a anonymous method. So this is a method definition that's being passed into this forEach method. And again, I will go ahead and run that. And here we can see we will then iterate over every element and we will print out the key value pair. Key, country here, capital here, country, capital, country, capital, country, capital, country, capital. Excellent. And that's all the variety of ways that we can go ahead and iterate over a map. So that's all I wanted to say about iterating on the map interface.